On today's episode 11 of Sculpt N Create, we're sitting down with someone who's been creating across mediums for over 25 years, whether it's through music, media, or meaningful conversations around healing and compassion. He's a singer, songwriter, a storyteller, and the voice behind the upcoming book, Forgiveness and Healing, which stems from his spiritual platform, God Jobs. But Ender Bowen's journey isn't just about creativity, it's about connection. From editing a documentary on Kentucky bourbon, still streaming on Amazon, to working behind and in front of the camera, to navigating a personal journey that brought him closer to God. Ender is on a mission to share what he's learned, rooted in compassion, authenticity, and a whole lot of heart. Oh, and don't let the deep vibes fool you. He's also a diehard wrestling fan, has dreams of storm chasing, and once co-ran a comedy troupe with his wife called Common Sense for Dummies. Today we're diving into his artistic evolution, his spiritual growth, and how he's using his experience to fuel his upcoming projects. From cleaning up and re-releasing music to building a touring podcast meets variety show platform. Let's welcome to the show, Ender Bowen. Welcome to Sculpt N Create, where fitness fuels creativity in helping artists, entertainers, and creators in their physical, personal, and career growth. I'm your host, Trea Da Fit Artist, and who I have with me today is Ender Bowen. Let's welcome him to the show. Welcome to the show, Ender.
Hey, thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome, man. Cool. Glad you can make it. So before we begin, let everybody know where they can find you, your links, so set them out.
You can find me at enderbowen.com. I also run the websites godjots.com and joycommission.com. Those would be the main places to find me.
Okay. All right. Cool. Y'all check my man out. All right. So, man, we're going to just go into it and then kind of go back and forth from there. So tell us a little bit about Ender. What do you do, currently?
I call myself an aspiring compassionist. I'm pretty much trying to make the world a more compassionate place. A lot of what I do, I make music, which is not necessarily all, about compassion. I write all kinds of music, mainly pop rock and stuff like that. I've been doing that for about 25 years. I do a website called God Jots, which is very much about like my spiritual journey and what I've learned from it. And that's definitely focused a lot more on compassion. And I also run another website called Joy Commission, which is focused more on how to inspire joy, how to bring joy to other people, to yourself, that kind of a thing.
Okay, I got you. So you say you make music and everything.
Yeah.
Tell us more about that. Like, how long have you been making music for?
Oh boy. So I started out as a drummer when I was in my teens, and pretty much wanted to be a rock star since the age of 4 or 5 when I saw Van Halen's Jump music video on MTV. Mm-hmm. I basically, I saw David Lee Roth, and I said, I want to be that guy. So pretty much chased that for the longest time, and kind of had my own bands and stuff, kind of pseudo going in my teens. I was in a pop metal band for a couple of years when I was 16 or 17. Went on my own after that, and I started teaching myself how to play guitar and basically everything else. So when I say I'm a solo artist, all of my music, apart from maybe a guitar solo here or there, is all me playing. But I've put out music now for 25 years. A lot of it's on Spotify, not all of it yet. And when I first moved down to Nashville, I'm from Northern New York originally. When I first moved down to Nashville in 2006, I got a independent recording contract and had that for about 2 years, but nothing ever came of it. Got out of that, went back to doing my own thing over time. Still working on music, putting music out. It's a little bit more sparse because, I've got kids and mortgage and all that fun stuff. But it's a journey, and I've played in a lot of different bands, either drums or bass usually, and I don't really get to play out for myself much because it's just hard to get that all organized and put together. It's still something that's on my to-do list, along with kind of want to do like some live podcasting tour stuff and speech engagements. Sorry. I just haven't really got that organized yet, and I'm still kind of looking to build a little bit more of a base before I can do that.
Okay, gotcha. And 25 years, that's a long time. And so I believe you said when we had our pre-interview, you said you were 45, right?
Yes, yes, I'm 45.
I'm 39, so I know we come from a time where it was CDs, cassette tape, and stuff like that.
Yep.
So
Yep.
and it's roughly around there 20 years ago. So well, a little bit, 20 years ago. So talk about that. Like, what have you like starting from now to now, starting from
Like
then to
back
now?
then and how different it was?
Yeah, like what's the difference? Yeah.
Back then, yeah. So like when I was in my teens, this was back when like we didn't have CD Baby, we didn't have Spotify, we didn't have any of that stuff. Yeah. So I grew up, I always call it like the middle of nowhere because that's just the easiest way to explain it. Kind of more or less the country, and there wasn't a lot of access where I was. Very limited amount of people you could play with, not a lot of opportunities to get discovered or even really play out, to be honest, and do anything more than be a strict cover band. Or maybe if you did original stuff, it was like maybe metal or something like that, because that's just what it was, or grunge. And back then you had to get discovered if you were ever going to either get a recording contract and record, or you had to have a ton of money. And where I was from, there wasn't a lot of money in that space. And back then, trying to put anything out, and I still have them. I made some 4-track demos and things like that. They're not great, but that's kind of how I learned. And I would say what happened was right around the time that things like Napster and the digital thing was starting to happen, I was learning how to record music on digital platforms. Like when I went to college, I was in an electronic music course, so we would compose electronic pieces. But I was also working in the music lab and also taught the music lab for a while, so I had access to all their equipment, and I was using it to work on music and try new things and learn how all of that worked. And so by the time my first album I put out in 2001, it was on a website called MP3.
Okay.
I still have that CD too. I'm pretty sure that doesn't exist anymore. I don't know how long it lasted, but back then it was like the precursor to what we have now, where you can upload your music, get it on a CD, that kind of thing. People could purchase it from there, I think, too. Okay. But this was before you were even really uploading it onto things like Spotify or anything like that. Like or SoundCloud. This was way before that. So digital music, even in 2001, even though Napster had already happened, like the whole digital music sphere was not an official place to be. It was all bootlegs and whatever. I put this together and I slapped it out, that kind of thing. I think my second album in 2003 was the same way.
Okay.
In 2005, I put my third album out on Cafe Press.
Okay.
Of all places.
Cafe Press. I think I heard of that.
Yeah, they do like ad hoc, kind of like Printful. I don't know if you've ever heard of them. I don't think Cafe Press does CDs or anything like that anymore.
Okay.
Again, this was before you were really going hard into CD Baby and disc makers, which I think those things existed, but I hadn't really come across them yet. And then, I got the recording contract and nothing really happened with that. So honestly, it was a while before I was putting out music again officially. And I think that's when I first started getting it's like 2009 or so. I think I did a remix of my third album, and that was the first time I went through disc makers and CD Baby and was getting stuff on Spotify and everything else. So like, I was there for that whole transition, but the thing that sucks is like when back then it was very difficult to get noticed to even be able to record legitimately. Now, since everyone can record in their bedroom, it's like a different kind of getting noticed. It's like now everyone is flooding it.
Yeah, it's getting more saturated. I think that's
cheapening the music a lot. Yeah, and it's so even when you make good music, I'm not trying to say that I'm making good quality music. I mean, every artist is going to say they do, but even if you are objectively doing that, it is hard to get discovered because it's still a money thing. It's still a networking thing and all, like who you know and everything else. So that's a big reason why I kind of dovetailed into not just doing music, but also doing some of this other stuff that I'm doing, because I'm trying to set myself apart from I don't want to just be a musician anymore anyway, but I'm trying to set myself apart from other people doing that kind of thing and have like an extra story to tell, so that there's like, oh, this is what is behind the music. This is not just like Ender Bowen from Nashville playing pop rock. there's a story behind it, and I think today that's something you definitely need if you want people to really be curious about you. I mean, you still need to be able to promote yourself and get yourself in front of the right people, like the right audience. But these days, if you can do it right, and I'm still figuring it out, you know, you get 1,000 people who are just into everything you do, and you're probably going to be in pretty good shape. You don't necessarily need a tour, as much as I'd love to do that.
Yeah.
And you don't necessarily need to have a recording contract. So it's a very different world there 2 to 3 decades on than it used to be.
Right. And it's funny you said that because I was talking to my cousin about this a couple of days ago, and it's a guy that I follow on YouTube. His name is Curtis King, and he was talking about that, like where he makes beats and he raps and stuff like that. And he was talking about a lot of artists nowadays, especially if they come in pre-streaming, they don't necessarily want to make content because they just want to make music and that's it. But he said when you look at it, the pure definition of content creation is when you make music. That is in itself content. But now we are in the streaming social media era or the digital area where where people want to see more, not just the music. They want to know what, like you just said, the story behind the music. And so they're going to have to come with content creation. So doing things like this podcast and you creating, doing stuff, even doing quick little quirky stuff on TikTok and stuff like that, to getting people knowing a little bit more about you and everything, so forth. So in order for them to get really excited about your music and who you are and even become a fan, because you want them to become a fan, they got to know you. They got to know you.
Yeah.
Is that
and
right?
They really do have to know you.
Right.
Because maybe they like a tune, but or a song, and maybe that gets them interested in hearing more. That's possible.
Right.
But and that might even be their first like entry point to who you are. But I really think to keep them, it's got to be more than the music. And I mean, we're talking about something different from like artists that get on the radio and that kind of thing, where it's like that's just saturation. When record companies and record labels have the money to saturate what you're listening to, you almost can't ignore it. So you're probably going to make new fans. But when you don't have a lot of that money and you're trying to set yourself apart, I mean, it's all kinds of different things. I mean, like we've talked about this before, like I'm doing those websites. I've got all kinds of different content that's not music. I'm doing podcasts. I've got a book coming out. I'm doing all kinds of things to try and get myself in front of people. And it's still hard. Whereas I'm watching some of these like 25-year-olds just chucking up one Instagram and suddenly everyone loves them. I'm like, what?
Really?
What am I doing? I'm strategizing. I'm going through all of this. And it's still rough. But, it's going to come at some point. And when it does, the good news is I've been working on this stuff for such a long time that there's going to be a lot for people to explore. And I think that's going to be part of what keeps them around.
Basically keeping a time capsule of who you are and everything like that. So all the embodiment of who Ender Bowen is in every facet. Yeah. So,
and you can kind of see that over. I just discovered this guy when he was 50, but I can see what he was doing when he was 25.
Right.
Half his life ago.
Right.
And man, what a different person he was, and like watch the journey and everything. That's actually kind of neat. When you think about it like that.
Yeah, I just came up with the time capsule thing, but so because when you think of music, it is timeless. Like you can go back, in the 20s and 30s and stuff like that, and some of that stuff is still played now in movies and TV shows and so forth. So, and people getting reintroduced, like you can think of like Michael Jackson. My son, I think when Michael Jackson, like 2015. So my son like knew the tail end of Michael Jackson and so forth. But people like that's like still like let's say they maybe like 3 to 6 or something like that, haven't never heard of Michael Jackson, but they love his stuff still, and everything. So that's a testament of like who he was and what he did and so forth, how he touched people, So music does touch people in so many ways, and you just never know who will hear your music years on from now. And then you putting your content around it.
Yeah.
They really like connect with it even on a deeper level, So,
and that's why I'm a big believer in you know, a lot of people are like, I've got to have all these right things line up before I do whatever. And to a certain extent, yes, strategizing and things like that's important. Don't just get a song done, for instance, and whip it out there and have no plan behind it to promote it or have a follow up. But at the same time, don't let that keep you from making it in the first place. You know, like the best thing that you can do is start and see what happens. Because, like I said, I mean, I put music out 25 years ago, and hardly anybody knows I exist still. So, but at the same time, like that's always going to be out there. It's always going to exist, you know.
Yeah.
And people someday are going to find it, maybe long after I'm gone. Who knows? But I would like to hope so. It would be great if they would find it before then, so that I can actually, you know,
Reap the
pay the
benefit.
bills, but whatever, you know.
Yeah.
I guess that's how it's
Right. Yeah. But definitely, man, like what's old to you or old to the next person gonna be new to somebody else. So
yeah,
you know,
absolutely,
when
absolutely.
when they discover it. So like, you know, talk about that too. So you say you been doing it 25 years and still haven't been noticed yet. So can you speak to people who like maybe thinking getting into the game and or already in the game and thinking they supposed to be at a certain level or at a certain standpoint in their career, but not necessarily getting
Yeah,
there. Like let them know like it is a grind thing. It does take a while and so forth.
it does take a while. I mean, overnight success is possible, but that's, I mean, really, that's a fluke. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's, you know, you see all these famous people, right? All these famous artists, they're huge. Anywhere from Taylor Swift to, I mean, think a little bit lower scale, like, I don't know, Incubus or something like that. Bands that people know and are familiar with.
Yeah.
But you still, I mean, you even have to think of it in the context of when we were growing up. It's still the same thing, like just a different deal where before I was talking about you had to get discovered to get signed in the first place, and that was the way you got up. Whereas now it's like everyone is more or less, in a sense, signed, and it's just all this stuff, and it's about discovery and who's got the most money or the most, or sometimes I guess the most clever.
Yeah.
But um, it's one of those things where you have to look at it and go, even back then, for every for every band you knew existed, let's just say that, whether they're huge or not, every band you knew existed, there were like 50 to 100 to 500 of them that nobody'd ever heard of. And like they'd go out and play, maybe they'd play bars, tour somewhere, or maybe they even toured the country and they just could not get a following, whether they were not good or whatever it was, just couldn't get it to work. And I mean, unfortunately, that's the norm. Most people who are going to put out their content, you know, 98% of people are just never going to get discovered. And now it's still the same thing. It's just in a different sort of marketing sphere and promotion. I don't mean that to say don't do it at all. Like your passion is your passion, do it. The worst thing you can do is not, because I think you'll end up burning a hole inside your soul if you don't do that. It needs to get out.
I'm glad you said that.
But yeah, but it's one of those things where I'm 45 and my favorite rock band of all time is probably U2. And I remember I was 15 when I started liking them. So mid 90s, 1995. They'd already done, and this is more speaking to U2 fans if any are listening right now. They'd already done Octane Baby and Europa and the Zoo TV tour. They were just about to go into like the pop discotheque, everything else thing. And at that time, Bono was 35. I'm now 10 years older than that, and I'm at the age they were when they were, you know, the song Vertigo.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
I mean, that was 4 or 5 years after Beautiful Day. I'm already at that age now where they were basically becoming a legacy act. I'm already at the age where they were becoming a legacy act, and I haven't even been discovered yet. Yeah. So it's this weird, it's a twofold thing where don't compare yourself to other artists, or don't compare yourself to like your biggest influences and the ones you want to be, because I can tell you right now, I did start doing that in my 20s, but by the time I got to like 27, and that was the time they did the Joshua Tree, which is With or Without You, I still haven't found what I'm looking for, you know, their big one with the number ones. And I still hadn't been discovered, and that was their big breakout. I'm like, I had to literally sit down and be like, okay, my journey is not going to be the same as their journey. And that on one hand can suck. On another hand, I just need to own it and be like, I'm not U2. I'm not telling their story. I'm telling Ender Bowen's story. And I think as you're growing as an artist, really think about, this is going to authenticity too, which is something I had issues with at the same time. Own your story, own your journey. Don't expect your journey to be like everyone else's. And if you can do that, I think you're going to dial into your authenticness and your authenticity a lot earlier than a lot of other people. Like for me, because I wanted to be a huge rock star, even the album I put out 4 years ago, I mean, it was a lot more grounded, and it was, I would argue I was being a lot more authentic, but even then I was trying to create I created this false rock star, and I dolled him all up and I called him the facade, and I thought it was clever, but like nobody knew who I was to begin with. So how's that an entry point? There was nothing like on the surface, there was nothing authentic about it. If people had, dived into it, they would have got what I was doing,
Right.
because I was trying to talk about the album was called The Art of Tactful Procrastination. And I was trying to talk about that sort of what the struggle is like when you're trying to make your dreams come true as you get older and come into adult responsibilities, and that sort of juxtaposition between where you're at and where you thought you were going to be as this ideal teenager. So I was trying to play out this character of like, if I had become what I thought as an 18-year-old I was supposed to become, this is how goofy it would look, And I was trying to make a point of, it's okay to have those dreams, but as you get older, if you're trying to chase those ideal dreams you had as an 18-year-old, you're so distant from that. It's almost immobilizing. You can't move. You got to think a little bit closer to real, which is not to say settle. It's just where are you really at, and what can you really do? Start there, and then start growing from there. Because I think a lot of people go, well, I was supposed to, if I was doing that right now, I'd be like, I was supposed to have like 8 houses, a yacht, and be won 5 Grammys by now. I haven't done any of those things. And if I sat here being like, I need those now, right? I would never even be attempting to do anything, because it would be too large a mountain to think that I could climb. But if I can make that mountain smaller, let me climb that one first, and then go from there. And that's a lot of what I'm trying to do. I'm sorry I got really long-winded there, but
no, it's all good.
That's what I would be telling a lot of, if nothing else, what I would really be telling artists today is be authentic, be you. And that doesn't mean you can't window dress it a bit. I mean, this hat is me. I'm very much me. I wear these kinds of hats all the time. But there are other hats that sometimes I wear that aren't everyday me. And I do it because it does add a little flash or adds a little whatever to get some attention. But it doesn't take so much away from who I am and what I do that the authenticness is overshadowed by that. So certainly be clever about how you're presenting yourself, but it still needs to be you. And that's true in the music as well.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And I believe that goes a long way, being very authentic, than having some, like, I don't know if it's in every genre, but I know in hip hop, certain people, even back then in the 90s and so forth, certain people had like a gimmick, to them. So they always say you got to have a gimmick so you can get recognized for that one thing. And then you branch out. Once you get recognized, you do what you be yourself then. But I think now with what we were talking about earlier, that doesn't go with well. It might work, in the initial run, but the long run.
But you got to have that follow-up authenticity to really show who you are. It's almost like saying, I'm trying to think of a really good example. If you can get someone's attention with this big something, but you've got to be prepared to express who you really are to those people. Because I think these days, I'm not saying people don't want to be entertained. They certainly do. So be an entertainer. And if there's a little bit of gimmickry to that, that's cool. But to a certain extent, I almost think of it like, I'm a big wrestling fan. And like, there's real people behind those characters. But even so, these days especially, a lot of those characters are just extensions of who those real people are, dialed up to 11 with a couple catchphrases and looks, and then taking those and how are they if we make this person a bad person? What are they like if they're a good person? And then just branching off of those ideas. So thinking of it in terms of that, I mean, I even style a lot of the videos I do now. I don't know if you've seen, but even my podcasts,
Okay.
I have, what's up, my EFF? Let me tell you how it is. I mean, those are all not stolen from wrestling people, but the idea is creating sort of gimmicky slogans and lines that are easy, accessible, but they're very much who I am, because I'm very much that whole communicative thing. So if you're going to do a lot of that, that's fine. It just has to really be who you are, or you turned up to 11 so that the authenticity is still there.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. Basically, you're saying it's really like brand positioning. Basically, you know, it's an extension of who you are, but you just putting it more on blast and stuff like that, or a little bit exaggerated.
Absolutely. Yeah, exaggerate a little bit if you want. There's no problem with that. Just again, make sure there's honesty behind it, and humility as well. I think that's something when I went through that whole thing with the recording contract, I came down to Nashville thinking I was God's gift to music. And then when I got a recording contract, like almost right away, I'm like, yeah, of course I did, because and then the whole thing imploded because I realized I wasn't really that big a deal. You know, I was just another face in the crowd, and that took a lot of wind out of my sails. And it was very hard to recuperate after that and get back on the horse. It took me years. But when I came back to it, it was more of I had a better sense of what it isn't just music for the rock star's sake. What am I doing with it? How am I serving my community with it? Whether that community is local or it's, you know, larger, global, or whatever it ends up being. How am I actually serving that community? As opposed to just some music, give me money. Which I'm not saying that's what my mentality was before that, but it was very much I'm making music because I like making it and I want to be a rock star. I hadn't really done a lot of the thinking on that.
Yeah, love what you do, you know, and they're gonna go, you know, money gonna come and so forth. I always try to go by that too, because I had a friend who was when I started my fitness coaching business and stuff like that. He was like, man, I got some ideas. I want to do this. I'm like, hey, but I like, are you passionate about it? I'm passionate about making money. I was like, nah, that don't work like that. I said, if you ain't passionate about it, you ain't gonna do it for a long time, because you just doing it for a quick buck and so forth. You'll end up getting bored or tired of somebody gonna piss you off, and then you just stop it all together. So you want to be passionate about it, because it's gonna be some hardships that you're gonna go through, and that's gonna take you over because you really love what you're doing and everything. So I believe that goes a long way. Now, when we talk about the finances and so forth, so that kind of good segue to that. Now, as a musician, you have record labels and you've been doing 25 years and so forth. So kind of talk about that. You know, people think they gonna get that one good hit, they're gonna be making buku cash, and you know, everything just gonna be sunny after that. Like I said, it takes so speak to that. Like, how was the money and how was the income or making money on music currently and different than how it was back then?
Well, you know, obviously back in the early days, or back, you know, when we were younger,
right,
there was really the only way you could really make music as an unsigned artist was to go out and play gigs, get paid for those gigs, maybe sell merch if you've got it, t-shirts and that kind of thing. Now, yeah, obviously you're still doing that, but getting on things like Spotify, and this is the other thing, you know, that people should know. I mean, a lot of artists that are probably listening to this are probably already on Spotify. They already know they're making very little off of that. It takes a lot of listens to make anything worthwhile. What you're really probably going to want to do, and I've worked with different people on this kind of thing, and just we haven't hit the right thing, but try and find, you know, people who can put your music into film and television. And
a sync deal, I mean.
Yeah, licensing. Okay. I think is really where you as an artist can make money, where it doesn't require the same kind of climbing up a mountain thing that Spotify and performing live are necessarily going to do. You can actually make some really good money doing sync licensing. You just got to find the right people to do it with you, who have the right connections, and they exist. I would recommend maybe avoid the sort of, I kind of think of it like my wife is an actress, and there's a difference between having an agent that has 100 actors under them and an agent that has 5 or 6.
Yeah, I get it.
Because you're going to get a lot more attention from that smaller one, and maybe that smaller one doesn't have the reach that this other one does. Yeah. But that reach doesn't matter if nobody knows you're there. So it's it goes a lot into a lot of that kind of stuff.
Okay.
I can tell you right now, I do not make a lot of money with music. In fact, I'm that's part of why I'm doing. I mean, I still have a regular. Well, actually, I don't have a job right now. I'm working freelance, but it's part of why I'm doing the book and the podcast and stuff to help me, build my audience, but also because there's the marketing aspects for things like a book are a lot more. They're easier and more targeted for things like music. I think generally speaking, trying to promote music is so hard because music is just music. Like, it's over the last decade and a half, we've been conditioned to see music as like a background thing. Whereas a book is still something you interact with. A book is not, I mean, yes, you could put it on an audiobook and have it read to you, but you're still paying attention to that. Whereas music, you're not always.
Right.
Unless it's your favorite bands. And again, if you want to be one of those favorite bands, you've got to get yourself in there and work yourself to it for that to happen. Otherwise, at most, your background music. And I think that's why we have a lot of artists like say Travis Scott, for instance. I wouldn't necessarily call what he does songs. I'm not belittling it at all. It's still music. I would call what he does vibe. Yeah. And I think that's kind of an extension of, yes, artists are still making albums. I'm still a big believer in albums and having that collection of music associate with itself in a way that has a broader connection. But we went from CDs and everything else being self-contained to, over time, we've turned into it's streaming, and it's a song at a time kind of streaming, where maybe you have a playlist of like, these songs are, this is for my workout mood, this is for my I'm painting the house mood, driving, whatever it is. So they're vibes, and that's how they're connected. And so I think people are thinking less and less about songs in the traditional sense, and very gradually we're moving more into vibes, because then it doesn't matter what Travis Scott's song is up next, after and before, right? As long as it fits the vibe. You could have 50 different artists on that vibe, and again, you may be on that playlist. Let's say you're on a really popular Spotify playlist. If there's 50 to 60 people on it, it's going to be hard unless people are paying attention. It is going to be really hard. Like, I'm working out, I'm on the treadmill, I'm vibing, it's feeling good. You have to have we're 10 songs into this, it all is the same vibe. You have to have something that really comes out of nowhere with that vibe that makes them stop and go, what's this? I really like this. And then go looking, right? You still got to stand out from that vibe. So it's hard. It's really hard. I obviously don't know the secret to how to do it. I'd be doing a lot better if I did. Think. But
right.
Always be trying something. Always be trying something new. Research what other people are doing and try that. If that isn't working, research what they're doing and do the opposite and see what happens. Like, not something like, oh, this person's doing a whole bunch of free things, I'm going to do something that costs $1,000. I don't mean that. I mean, just like, if this person's trying to get on vibe stuff and it's working for them, give it a shot. If that's not working, do the exact opposite, because maybe that's the lane that people aren't paying attention to right now, and you might stand out. Who knows? So I feel like there's this whole new rule set for it's like this whole new kind of discovery. Like, Spotify playlists have become the new top 40 radio. And top 40 radio is just the same old, I don't know. I know my parents said the same thing when I was younger, but I just find it bland, and not all of it, but a lot of it is it just feels soulless. Like, I went in, I slapped something together, the studio put money behind it, and off we go. Like, there isn't anything that moves your soul.
Yeah.
And I'm at least trying to move your soul, even if the music ends up speaking.
Yeah, definitely, man. I mean, a lot of that, like I said, again, talking with my cousin, a lot of that is the mainstream pushing a certain narrative. They only pushing out what works. Yeah, and a lot of that it gets.
You can't blame them. I mean, if they're putting all that money behind it.
And like I said, and that way it gets oversaturated about one thing, and only about to hear is only this type of sound, like you said, the vibe. And they not seeing the real, or the one that got that good lyrical content that they'll make you think, make you feel something.
Yep.
And so I don't know what's the middle ground, or how the independent artists can break through, but I
don't know either. But I think about My wife and I talk about this a lot. Like, we're big Oasis fans, right? And they're doing their reunion tour coming up.
Okay.
And I remember in the mid 90s, it was like 1995, I think I heard Live Forever, which was one of their very first hits.
Okay.
I heard that like in the spring of 95. I think it came out earlier in the UK, but it took a bit to get into America. And I remember at the time, there was a certain sound that I love a lot of mid to late 90s music. So I'm not like saying it like I didn't. But there was a certain kind of sound that was happening then that was like already we were moving towards post grunge. The pop and the rock was starting to sound very consistent, and I wouldn't say bland or saturated or similar. It was just this area that Top 40 was occupying that was a lot of different styles, but all kind of fit this sort of it feels all right, it feels okay, like nothing you have to overthink or gets in your face. And then Oasis came out with that just wall of sound. And I remember the first time I heard that on the radio, I went, what? My wife says the same thing. We didn't know each other back then. We had the same experience. What is this?
Yeah.
And, you know, and that's, I remember that feeling. And I remember, and I know that the trick to it is creating something in this saturated thing where people hear it and go, what is this? This is not like anything that I'm hearing right now. It's harder now because for all intents and purposes, everything's been done. I don't know what you could invent new musically that hasn't already been done.
Yeah.
But I guess that's where I would say to an up and coming artist, try thinking against the grain. It's going to be, I'm not saying don't try and come up with something new because you won't come up with something new. I was just saying this to somebody earlier today, this book that I have coming out, I'm not necessarily saying anything particularly new or just mind-blowing or whatever, but what I am is I'm saying it my way, I'm packaging it my way, I'm putting my story and my voice behind it, and that's what makes it unique. And I think is going to make it resonate in its own different way.
But
and I think that's the same thing maybe we have to think about with music. If you're putting music out and you're like, I'm in this style, I'm in this realm and this style of music, cool. You're not necessarily doing anything new. What can you do that's you that makes it different from everybody else? And this is where maybe the whole everything sounds the same thing is actually a strength. I always tell people there's no such thing as weaknesses. It's just strengths in disguise. So if you can figure out what you think that weakness is, make that your strength, and now you're standing out in front of people. I don't know why I haven't been doing that. Now I got to write that down.
When you started up on it, man, I seen where you were going with it. I said, oh, yeah, that sounds good right there. Yeah. Okay, cool.
It's good I do these kinds of conversations because I'll say something and go, I know what I'm doing now.
Definitely, man. Yeah.
Gotta work my brain through it.
Oh, yeah.
This is what happens when you're working. Get around people too. This is another thing I tell musicians. I'm not necessarily saying create with people. Do that if you're comfortable. But get around people and have conversations, and especially people who may even think differently from you. I mean, I'm big on that anyway. But from a creative standpoint, because it may cause you to make your mind juices. Like I work from home almost all day long, and there's nobody here, no one to talk to. So I don't get to, I feel like a man in a cave sometimes. You're going to come into my house and my office is just cave paintings or something. Like, get me out. But like if you're talking to people, like you would be amazed at the way your brain, if you just let it go, like, or like I do, let my mouth go, the things that will come out of your mouth and you go, hold on, take that and put it over here. Like, it happens to me all the time. Not because I'm particularly smart. It's just that interaction causes new things to fire off in your brain. And I think that's really important for creatives is just get out and talk and socialize, and don't be afraid to share who and what you are. And don't be afraid to have that challenged, because that is what's going to get you further, I think.
Definitely. And I definitely agree with you on that. And that's the reason why earlier when I was speaking about the money aspect of it, because it was a little bit different when we were growing up and they were selling CDs and stuff like that. It would cost about like $20 to get, and then now streaming and now people can get it all that music for just that same $10-$20.
Yep.
So it kind of put a little strain on the money in music and so forth. So especially for independent artists, and so it's just really about navigating ways that you can do that, and that does speak to what you were saying, stand out. Even though it is saturated in a time like this, you standing out. I think too. I think people starting to wake up from it as well. They getting tired of the same music that being pushed down their ears in a sense, and they are looking for a certain connection and something they can relate to.
Yeah, I think too. It's interesting because I really do believe that we're just about to have the paradigm. I don't know what it's going to look like, mind you, and I don't know what I'm basing this on. But to kind of speak to what you're saying, because I agree with you, I think we're about to hit a paradigm shift in music and in music distribution that really makes good on the promise of what all this digital stuff was intended to be in the first place. So, like, I really feel like even though we have Spotify and we have Apple Music and SoundCloud and all of those, we haven't really figured out what they really are and what they can really do. And I think we're about to, I think the last 20 to 25 years has been this sort of discovering the new frontier, and then kind of thinking we know what that new frontier looks like, and then figuring out, oh, but what if we build highways all through this frontier?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And all of a sudden now everyone's driving these big cars. Now all of a sudden these new towns are popping up. That's kind of where I think the new thing is. I don't know exactly what that's going to look like, but I almost feel like the passive streaming days. Maybe give it another decade. I could be wrong about this, but I almost feel like that's going to go out, and owning your music again is going to come in. And I don't know what that's going to be like. I don't know how that's going to change the market saturation of musicians. It may be that a lot of them go, that's not for me, because if I can't put my music up and somebody can just discover me randomly, and it's a little bit more work for them, I don't know if I want to do it. It's like, well, I keep thinking of all these things, like how Facebook, you can advertise your work, and for some people it works and for others it doesn't, or YouTube and such, like those things. Like, I don't know how radio hasn't died yet. I almost feel like maybe it's about to. People say it's going to, but we've gotten to such a. You were talking about how the radio has gotten so it's almost like just the same. We were both talking about the same thing over and over again, and it makes sense. That record labels are going to go with what they know works, what's comfortable, I don't want to call it bland. I mean, it's bland for me, but it doesn't necessarily for someone else. But it's not very challenging. They don't want to challenge you, because if they challenge you, they might lose you. And so if they can put all that money with the saturation on top 40 and make that happen, I think people are going to start tuning out. I think they're going to feel intrinsically, and I think they're already starting to feel it, like it's just there's no soul in it.
Know what I was saying?
I want something. And they're going to want to look for, whether they're looking for it on Spotify or somewhere else. And I think that's where the authenticity comes back in. And I'm not trying to say that bands like, say, Maroon 5 or Coldplay are not authentic. I don't mean that. But I mean, I even hear Coldplay now and I go, they sound like Maroon 5. And Maroon 5 sounds like, can't think, Imagine Dragons. And Imagine Dragons sounds like, they all sound the same. It's, to me, anyway, maybe someone who's like hip these days would be like, no, they're not. They sound way different and blah, blah, blah. And then maybe they're right. To me, it's gotten stale. And I think what we're ready for next is something is about to happen that totally blows our minds, whether that's the coming of the new Beatles or, something else that's on such a different level and wavelength, whether it's the technology that makes that happen or it's the artist that makes that happen. It's going to be a paradigm shift. It's going to be mind-blowing. And I just don't know. Could even be it changes the way we do live gigs, because as the music paradigm and how you deliver it has changed, the concept of live gigs really hasn't. So I'm wondering if maybe that has something to do with it, where...
The concept of gig, what you mean?
Well, like, so take me, for instance, right? Nobody really knows who I am. If let's say starting today, went out and started gigging, it would take me years and years and years. I'd be in my 60s before anybody even really saw or acknowledged me. Well, maybe not my 60s, but you see where I'm going with it. Like, it's going to take a lot of work to work myself up a bill and even dream of being a headliner in some way, shape, or form.
Okay.
I don't have time for that.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I've got kids, I've got to work.
Yeah.
By then I'm going to be, I mean, I'm still going to be moving around and be pretty healthy, I think, but, you know, I'm going to be technically retirement age. So there's got to be a new way. I don't want to call it skipping the line, but that changes the way we do live gigs, at least in a independent sense.
Okay.
That is more almost like if you took your typical live gig where you're just ending up at your local bar and melded that with something like a festival and built it around something that's more an event than a random live gig. Like, there's nothing special about a random live gig. You don't even know sometimes who the band is that you're going to see, which I get it. That could be fun. But for the bands that are trying to break out, it's the same darn thing over and over again. And yes, that does make you a really good live performer over time. I get that. But I don't think that's where we're at anymore. I think we're in a different world where even those live gigs, in a sense, have to compete, like the independent ones anyway that I'm talking about, have to compete in a similar way that you and I do in that swamped market of digital music.
Right.
So I feel like there's going to be a paradigm shift there too. I just don't know what that's going to be. It might go in tandem with whatever I'm talking about.
Yeah, most definitely. And like you said, still the authentic people will reign through, you know, reign true when that happens, that paradigm shift happens. And I think I hear a lot of artists most time, even ones that like give me like, man, listen to this song, they send me a YouTube and so forth and call that marketing. I mean, you know, I think it get to a point where they really gotta put some work into it and some thought and all that stuff like that. They really want to get their name out of it. And just then instead of posting something on here that say, check my music out, it got to really be some kind of marketing or strategy to it and everything to stand out, you know.
And I was talking with somebody, this was maybe 2 years ago after I put out the last thing I put out. It helps that I have a large collection of music. Again, it's not all necessarily available on Spotify yet. I've got to go back and clean up and remix some older stuff. And that's just a matter of money and time.
Yeah.
But I was talking to them and they were talking about something they were going through, because a lot of what I do is, you know, I don't consider myself a therapist by any means. I don't mean to therapize people, but I do like listening to their stories and helping them get it out. You know, even if it's just talking to me or someone they know and finding ways to relate to it, letting them know they're not alone. That's the big thing for me. And I wouldn't always do this, but every once in a while I'd have these conversations. And I had one with somebody and they were talking about some of their struggles and I was kind of talking about mine. I'm like, you know what? I actually, believe it or not, I have a song that talks about exactly this thing. Why don't I send it over to you? Just, you know, check it out and see if that does anything for you. Didn't try to put it out there like, hey, listen to my song or check this out. It was relevant to the conversation at hand.
Right.
And so
I like that.
And I'm still working on figuring this out in my own social marketing sphere, but I feel like that's the way in, where you're not blasting people with, check this out, listen to this, blah, blah, blah. It's taking the time to be like, even if you're doing it passively, like you're just putting a post up, it's talking about your struggle and your story and trying to relate to other people and then following that up with, you know, here's a song about that, you know?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, like a lead up to it, you know, like in the storyline, so people can be engaged. So when they hear this music, they got some kind of feeling and thought process towards it, and they can really connect to it even on a deeper level. Yeah, that's all I'm saying, you know.
They might even be more willing to listen to it and give it a real shot, because they're like, I get what you're talking about. Let me see if the song, you know, does the same thing. At the very least, they might listen to it more closely, even if it turns out they don't like it, you know, but at least you got another ear on it. And unfortunately, that's a lot of work, because it takes up a lot of time and you really got to know people and talk to people and stuff. And that's something I've got to figure out how to do. That's something I really want to do.
What's that? The talk. What's that?
talking to people
Okay.
and hearing what they're going through. And then if I have something that connects with that, like say it's my book or my music or maybe an article, I do that sometimes too that I've written. It's like, hey, see if this hits you, because it might say better what I'm trying to say without me going on one of my long-winded speeches, which as you can see, I'm apt to do.
Oh, you good, man. I mean, you give him, content that I want to get out here, because as you talking, that's the reason when we had a pre-interview why I'm doing Fit Masterpiece Collab. In that same vein, not the fitness style side of stuff, but the networking side of things.
Right.
That definitely, where people can share their ideas, get to meet other people and everything. They can put them in different places and opportunities for that. And I'm figuring it out myself. So in the midst of that, that's what I'm saying. It ain't just for me; it's for everybody in there. So like when I once they get going to a place, I want that to be where people can post something and people give them ideas on what's what, and then we all maybe come to a consensus together and how we can move forward. Especially when I started getting the music out there, my music out there itself. So I'm gonna be a sponge, listen to everybody else. You know what I'm saying. So yeah, so definitely, man. I think networking is key in our field, and stuff like that. And a lot that we don't do that a lot. We have circles that we make music with people per se, but we don't do it on the business side of it or whatever. We just do it like from a place of fun.
Yeah. And I wonder sometimes. I was thinking about this back when I lived in upstate New York. Where I said there was a lot of nothing. It was hard to get attention or do anything. I remember at the time, even in my early 20s, being like, well, what if rather than trying to be an artist getting out there by yourself, or a band trying to get out there and like, yeah, you're doing the work yourself and trying to get out there. What if you created some kind of a collective with 5 to 10 other artists or bands and made that like you're not necessarily in business together, but you're like a network of people who package each other together. So hey, we need to put together a gig. It's cool. I don't have to go look for anyone to fill up my roster or my band list. I've already got people. Here we go. And contributing resources where it's like, well, nobody in our band knows how to build a website, but somebody in that band does. And maybe we can offer them something that we can do really well as a trade. And almost like building like this little, what do they call those? I can't think of it right. I have afternoon brain.
Yeah, it's all good.
Yeah, just like those little. What can I think of it? Like a compound, but like not like of crazy people, but just like a compound. Whether that's virtual or not, of all of you work together, you look out for each other, you look out for each other's best interests, and you're always trying to figure out how to not just help you, but them too. And then you work together and grow together, and that rising tide. Brings up all the ships, lifts all ships.
Yeah.
Ships.
Yeah. So
my brain is starting to shut down.
I mean, I guess you're just saying like a support group, and everything like that, a collective and everything like that. Yeah, y'all iron sharpen iron. If that's what if what you're trying to say, in a sense where everybody.
You want to get on a Spotify playlist and your collective is full of 5 to 10 artists, then let's all have our own playlist. And then where some of us are branching out into other playlists, see if we can bring some of the other ones too. Yeah. Hey, playlist maker, you liked us. You're going to like these guys. They're on a similar wavelength. And, you all become each other's, guerrilla street marketers and managers in a sense. Which there you go. You could even have one manager kind of managing all 10 groups rather than all 10 of you having to go find your own, at least until you get established and can branch out.
See, that's another idea right there. You might need to write down. Yeah. So definitely, man, Say what now?
I said I'm full of them today. Apparently, even when my brain is shutting.
Yeah, definitely, man. Because when you think about it, like you really just building your own. I would say real estate in a sense, or brand recognition. Everybody, y'all building y'all whole. I got a brain fog. What I'm trying to say. But you building that real estate for everybody to come to you. Your fans looking at them, they fans looking at you. and all that, and that helping y'all to get noticed and seen quicker. And so that's why I say it's all about the collab and networking and stuff like that. And places like
yeah, I think you're thinking on a similar wavelength as well. Yeah, and I know a lot of people are doing that now, but I don't know if they're doing it in a way that really formalizes it. You know, in a way that I'm talking about, like almost turns it into, let's name this thing that we've got. And, you know, so it's almost like it's more than just a few networking bands and artists. This is like a family.
Yeah. There you go. There you go. Yeah. That's a better word. I think that's what we need to, instead of me saying collective, it might be family, and y'all grow from separately but collectively at the same time. And which I would say that segues to everything we've been talking about, like packaging yourself up in a certain way, breaking through the noise, and marketing yourself in a certain way, and building those connections and everything, and relatability in your music, but showing them who you are. Let's talk about your book, and you said your blog post, God Jot. Tell us a little bit more about that.
So just basic rundown of God Jots. It's more or less about, I talk about my spiritual journey, but it's also just kind of, I focus more on the compassion aspect. I mean, it's called God Jots because it does come from my experience and my spiritual journey, and I want to be transparent about that. But it really is for everyone. I'm just trying to, with all of what I'm trying to do is be a more compassionate voice in a very, it seems, discompassionate world. You know, be a light in a room, ignite some other lights. And while I'm not an expert, a lot of this stuff is written for me too. You know, I'm not perfect. I'm always trying to learn new things and be new things and grow. But I'm also trying to share what that experience is. God Jots is very much about, I think you and I talked about earlier on, my experience growing up, and at least where I grew up, church came off to me as being very sad and judgy, and that just didn't speak to me. And for me, it was more about feeling like God knew me and spoke to me in a way that I would understand, like God got with me that way. So that's kind of what I'm trying to do. A lot of my friends say I'm a little too loosey-goosey about it, but I'm not really as concerned about the, you know, educating people on, like, say, scripture and all of that. If that's the direction you want to go, cool. I'm more about, like, how are you treating people? And to me, that's the most important part. And the forgiveness book, it's called Forgiveness and Healing: How to Seek for and Understand the Power of Forgiveness. It really is about how why forgiveness is important, how powerful it is, you know, how good it is for your mental, physical, and emotional health. Not just forgiveness, but apologizing too.
Okay.
And it has stories that of some of mine, other people I know, and some others who contributed stories about their, you know, processing forgiveness, either little tiny things like little forgiveness things, or big ones, you know, something that was really a struggle for them. Because I want to kind of show that whole spectrum. But for me, the reason I wrote it, it was a two-part thing. One was I was always going to publish a God Jots book that at the very least was an anthology of the stuff I've written online. But when I looked, it was like a year ago or more, when I looked at what people were landing on and spending more time on and what they were searching for, like on Google, you know, looking at those insights, I'm like, people seem to be really kind of interested in learning more about forgiveness. And so immediately my sort of struggle antenna went up, and I'm like, they must be struggling with something. So that's why I went ahead and wrote this book. Took me a year, you know, researching some other authors and getting into scripture a little bit, trying to really balance it out with very, like, everything from scripture to what people like C.S. Lewis and other writers have done, to actual stories. And that's just the first half of the book. The second half of the book is different ways you can offer forgiveness, from the simple to the more complicated, and different ways you can apologize, from the simple to the more complicated or elaborate, depending on what the situation is, with, like, stories behind them, examples behind them, why I do it that way, why it's powerful, what it means. And, you know, I just kind of also feel like, again, we live in a very divisive world, that I'm trying to show a more compassionate one. And I think for me, forgiveness is, at the end of the day, you know, you can look at it from a political standpoint or whatever, but if we're going to come together and we're going to build a better society that listens to each other and works together, forgiveness has got to be in there somewhere. Like, whether or not it's a perceived transgression or what, if someone from the right or the left is going over across the bridge to someone on the other side and says, hey, you know what, before we say anything, before we do anything, I forgive you. Let's just go from here.
Okay.
Treating people like real people and trying to figure out how to do things right. I do talk about that at the beginning of the book. Like, that's a reason why I've written it. And I bring it up a couple times here and there in the book, but it is really more about personal forgiveness. And then when understanding that, how does that apply to the rest of, like, say, your community, to your country, to the world at large, and what does that mean going forward? Trying to find new ways in, and I like to throw things on their head. People like to be like, well, I'm not forgiving until they've apologized, or I'm expecting this, and this before I forgive. And I'm like, start with the forgiveness, see what happens. Like, why not? Forgive, truly mean it, and or apologize, truly mean it, and then go from there. Like, what's keeping you from doing that? And I don't know. Maybe that sounds a little idealized, but we got to be doing something different, because whatever we're doing now, all those forces in the world that are dividing us and conquering us, we got to start taking the power back, and that only happens if we can talk to each other.
Yeah, and I believe, you putting those type of ways that people can do, other than like a scripture being so, I don't want to say it like that, but but a lot of folks can quote scriptures until you go read this and read that, but sometimes they don't be coming from a place of where they relate, or but they just come from sometime a place of judgment, like you were saying before, and folks don't want to hear that. If you ain't been through it, and everything like that. You've been through it, you can get through it in a certain way, and I think that goes a long way. So also too, now what you saying, that going and replace like people know who you are, and with your music, do some of your music speak to certain, like we were talking earlier, like some of it can segue into some of the music you've been making, or have you been making music around the book or God Jobs?
No, I haven't been making any music around the book. My music tends to be a little bit more like, I think my music is a little bit more, has the more emotional feel to it. A lot of what I write about, in the earlier days before I, was humbled by the recording contract and everything, it was a little bit more, the style wasn't emo, but it was definitely, if you read the lyrics, you'd be like, man, this is like some angst going on in here.
Yeah.
But that's, what I felt I was feeling at the time, and I'm sure people could relate to that then. A lot more of what I write about now is more, it's everything from, like I was talking about with that one album, like the struggles that people might be going through maybe at our age group. And they're not always about, like, say, forgiveness or compassion per se. I think they're compassionate in and of themselves because they're talking about these kinds of things that maybe people can relate to and understand. There's some spiritually based stuff in there sometimes, but a lot of what I'm trying to do is speak to emotions and speak to struggles. So where God Jots and like this forgiveness book can be very specific, like compassion, forgiveness, and Joy Commission is joy and that kind of stuff. The music tends to be comes from a more emotional place, meant to suggest compassion, or meant to bring you joy, or make you feel like maybe you're not alone in the struggles you're going through, but from a more abstract sort of way, if that makes any sense.
For the music, right?
Yeah, for the music, right?
Yeah. Okay, gotcha. And then the God Jots is more so, and the book is more so coming from myself, like the book it says, healing, and everything, redemption, forgiveness.
Yeah.
So coming from helping in a helping space.
Yes.
Say again.
Yeah, and they all work together in a certain way. It's just, like if you read my God Jots work or watched my podcast, you might listen to my music and get something different out of it than, say, somebody who just listened to the music.
Right.
And you might, vice versa. You might listen to the music, go watch my podcast, and get something different out of the podcast than you would just listening to the music. watching the podcast. So it's one of the things I'm trying to do. And I would recommend any artist, musician do this if you're trying to get ahead. Am I still working on it? Is this still a struggle? Absolutely. But these things are all a part of me telling my story. And at the very least, if you read these things, if you watch the podcast and whatever else, if you're checking out all these other things that aren't my music, and then you go listen to my music, you're going to understand what's fueling it. Or if you listen to my music and then go, I want to go check out what other stuff this guy does, you're going to understand what fuels the thing you just listened to. So while the stuff you listen to is not necessarily like talking about those specific things, you can tell they're fueled by it. There's a lot of compassion, struggle, a search for joy, search for meaning in those. Certainly God Jots for sure has a lot of that searching for meaning and understanding in there.
Okay. All right. Now I go back into that. So basically just it's a different angle than what your music is. Okay.
Yeah.
I got you. Okay. I got you. Hey, so now with God Jots, is some of that inside of the book or is that completely different and everything from there?
No, I mean, I think one, and initially I was going to have a few blog articles from my website in the book to help support some ideas, but I was getting so much out of the research I was doing that I didn't think it was necessary. I do think I put one in there, but for the most part, this is all new content. I do have, some articles coming up to help promote the book where I took some quotes and snippets from the book and kind of commented on them, and those will be coming out like weekly starting on release day on July 15. And then, it's just a way I've helped promote the book and get some more content behind it. But it's definitely all fueled by the same sort of messaging. For me, compassion, grace, forgiveness, redemption, all of those things are an important part of God Jots. I just tend to focus on the compassion part more because I feel like that's something people need to hear more and understand more. Like anytime you're running out there throwing people in a group together and saying these people are all evil because blah 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 blah, it's like you don't know any one of these people. Like technically that's a bigoted statement, so it's one of those things where I'm trying to get people to stop for a second and being compassionate it's really like if that's all you do, it's like easy to focus on that. It's hard to do because every person's different, and boy are some people gonna like really wrinkle your feathers or whatever, but and certainly that doesn't mean you sit around and let them be discompassionate towards you. You're allowed to be like, okay, this ain't working, I'm gonna go somewhere else now and talk to somebody else. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not saying compassion is something where you beat a dead horse or let people walk all over you. It's something where you've got to be compassionate to yourself too. And it's all new things that I'm navigating. I mean, every time I write a new article, I'm like, oh gosh, hadn't really thought about that. But now that I'm writing it, it's new things I'm learning. So, yeah.
And in a way, you approaching it. You approaching it by you are learning it as well. You're not coming from not just a way of teaching. You are coming from a place of learning, then you're applying what you learn and letting people know based on your experience. And like I said, that resonates a lot more better than somebody that's saying, go to scripture, go to scripture here and here, and there you'll find your answer, and not really giving you a rhyme or reason why or why this is or whatever, and stuff like that. And they can sometimes somebody need to hear from experience, like what you went through. Maybe it might be the same thing you went through, that you went through with them, that they got coming to you, or a problem they have, or issues they have. But hearing how you got through it and what you did, definitely can go a long way with them and everything. Definitely commend you on that, so forth. You're not coming to a place of preaching to them, but you
no. I mean, every once in a while, I suppose it can come off that way a little bit, but it's really more about, look, this is what I think, and I'm basing it on this, and try and do that. But I'm not sitting there going, "You're an awful person if you don't do these things." I'm just saying, like, uh, trying to find a different way in, and like I like to do things in a maybe unorthodox way. Like I had an article earlier this year that a lot of my Christian friends did not like because I was like, well, what if we've got this all backwards? What if, like, Satan, yes, Satan is trying to corrupt us, but what if we're Earth is not the battleground in the same way we're thinking of? What if we're actually soldiers to try and convert Satan back to redemption and to grace? And I just meant it as a thought process. Like, you know, what would the world look like if that's the way it really was? Wouldn't that make us more empowered? Wouldn't that make us the stronger of the two? I mean, yes, with God's help, of course, but wouldn't that make the whole story a little bit different too? And I got a lot of, but it was great because it got the conversation going, and I'm really was just trying to be like, I'm really just trying to get us to look at people that we don't like, or our own personal boogeymen. We all have them, with the sense of they may not be, there may be more to them than what you see on a day. Like your arch enemy, like, may only be an arch enemy to you. They're a family man to, they're someone's dad, someone's brother, someone's whatever. Like, I'm not saying you're ever going to like this person, but are you really telling me just because your subjective experience with them that there isn't anything redeemable about them? And so that's where I was trying to go with that. And it's okay, but not everyone sees it the same way. But that's how I came into God and Jesus in the first place, was thinking in ways that were a little unorthodox, because the way that it was happening where I grew up, it was not reaching me. I'm like, you're going to have to reach me a different way. And I think God did that. And so I think sometimes I'm just trying to flip that same script and be like, well, will this speak to you? Will that speak to you? And trying to get them on their level,
Yeah, definitely. And that's, like I said, you come into a place where it's different from the whole preaching style, and stuff like that, because everybody receives stuff differently, and everything like that or whatever. Because it's so many ways to get to one thing, so many solutions to get to one thing. So why I got to be just this way to do it, So that's what I'm saying. All right. So with that said, man, like, is there anything else that you like to talk about that we haven't discussed here today?
No, I mean, I feel like we covered a lot of, and I appreciate you having me on to talk, and kind of get my story out there. There's so much that I'm trying to do. I'm really want to start a couple more podcasts, maybe somewhere I actually have some guests. Right now, the podcast that I do for God Jots is really just me,
solo,
doing a video and audio version of my articles so that they can go onto other platforms. But I do want to start doing some stuff, maybe a live podcast of a sort, and then another one with some guests. I've got a couple other friends that actually want to start more podcasts with me. So I'm really trying to lean into a lot more of that. And then obviously, promoting the book. I want to do a lot more of these kinds of things too. A friend actually said to me, what if like a couple of years from now you do a follow-up to this and be like, what I learned from this book, and using the methods even that I have in this book. I'm like, that could be a lot of fun. So I'm always thinking
maybe like a TED Talk on it.
Yeah, TED Talk on it would be great. Like, I use this method, and here's what happened. I'm just trying new things. Even from a marketing standpoint, I'm trying new things, and at the end of the day, I just want to help people, and help people understand that they're not alone. Like, maybe there isn't anyone in the world that's had your exact same experience, but I'm a big believer in the idea that it's impossible to have absolutely nothing in common with another human being, because at the very least, you're both human beings. That means you both have struggles. Compare notes, and when you compare notes, like a friend that I just podcasted with, actually, he was talking about something really awful that he went through. And then he said, he ended it with, but it's not like I went through, this, it wasn't as bad as the things that some other people have experienced. And I'm like, that's not your fault. Like, you don't compare what you experienced to something that you perceive as being worse, because it's not your fault you didn't experience something worse. Like you can, like, what are you supposed to do? Walk out in front of traffic and get hit by a car and then go through all that struggle? Like, your story is your story and it's relevant. And I mean, I even wrote about this in an article. Like, sometimes when people are trying to relate to you and it comes off to you as maybe sounding trivial, like maybe that's the best they got and they're doing the best they can. Give them some bandwidth. Let them surprise you with that. And yeah, sometimes people are being jerks, but I don't think that's typically the case. I think most of the time when people are trying to say, it's kind of like, when this happened to me and it comes off like, I think, anywhere near as bad, it's like, well, what are they supposed to do? It's not their fault they didn't have your experience, but they're trying to relate. So maybe work with them, like, do a little dance, it's trying to get people to learn how to communicate better, which I absolutely need, because I can definitely be awkward in social situations at first. Then I lighten up, then I don't shut up, and then that's a whole other bad thing.
It's all good. Yeah, definitely, man. But like I said, I like what you're doing, that definitely, because because we definitely need some self-healing. And then I have talked with this with another guest of mine, that us as men, we bottle so much stuff up, and how society have us to do it that way, being a man, because we looked at as weak in a sense, and being, like you said, self-healing and forgiveness and so forth, and being able to find the inner within. I definitely think that can help a lot of people, doing that really, because they ain't really doing the work, that, or not realizing what work they can do to help themselves and others as well.
I mean, even little things. You don't have to do anything huge. That can be very immobilizing, because a lot of people, and I'm guilty of this too, I've always wanted to make a lot of money, not just because obviously I want to have a better life and I want to provide for my kids and pay the bills, but I also want to do big things for people. Like, I want to be able to commit a lot to a charity, or invest in something that does some really good stuff for people. But you can't let that immobilize you and keep you from doing anything at all. Sometimes I wonder how much of that's vanity or pride and guilty. Like, I don't mean that in a judgy way. Like, sometimes I wonder with me, is that a vanity thing or not? I don't know. Like, do I want it to be like this big chunk of money so that I can go, look what I did? I don't know. But trying to do smaller things. I mean, even now, when I'm honestly not making very much money, like I said, I'm technically unemployed, working freelance and doing the best I can. I'm still given to charity. It's not much, but I'm still given to my favorite ones, like Make-A-Wish and stuff like that. I wish I could do more, but I'm doing what I can do, So
definitely, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like I said, I'm glad you shared that, because a lot of folks would, talk about that, and like I said, you coming from that place of vanity or transparency helps people to, open up better and about their situation and taking action as well. But and we had to close and stuff like that, so I got your message and so forth. But yeah, so, out of what we've been talking about today, everything we've been talking about today, what would you say would be the biggest takeaway somebody can get from this?
Have a story, be authentic. Actually, let me start with be authentic. The story is going to come. Okay. And don't be afraid to share that story. I mean, that's why we're here, I think, is to share your story. And I'm a big believer in you've had your story and your experiences for a reason. They're meant to help people. I'm not saying don't make money off of that. Like, your story is equity, like if you can tell that story and share that story, and yes, make like putting out books. I just sold my story to a motion picture company. As long as the authenticity and the intention of it's to help people, yeah, of course you should be compensated for that. And as artists, I definitely believe as artists we should be compensated for what we do, and that really makes it hard for me when it comes to things like Spotify and platforms that it's like they're the gatekeepers. You can't really do much about it. You got to be on them, but you kind of just don't want to be at the same time. That's where I think the paradigm shift's coming. But yeah, just whatever you do as an artist, be authentic, be open to fair criticism. Don't be afraid of who you are. Sometimes I'm afraid of who I am and what I'm, things. Be willing to hear out where maybe you might be misstepping. Like, if I had listened to a couple of my friends on the last album I did, and that whole facade thing, that might have turned out better. So don't get so,
In a box.
tunnel vision that you don't think a little bit outside the box and really think about what you're doing. I mean, what we're doing is a business one way or another. So we
Right,
got to remember
definitely.
that.
Yeah, I like that. All right, so we can end it there, man. Now, let everybody again know where they can find you. So set your links out and, shout your books out and everything. Your books and God Jot out again.
Yeah, so you can find my main website is enderbowen.com. Godjots is godjots.com, and my book is coming out July 17th. Before that, it's already on pre-sale, or pre-order, on Kindle and signed, and you can get that at forgivenessbook.godjots.com. If you go to godjots.com, you'll find it. And I'm on all the socials. Everything's Ender Bowen except for Instagram, which is ender.bowen for some reason. Can't really change that, I guess, but yeah, yes. So that's where you can find me.
All right, cool. All right, y'all check my man Ender Bowen out, and we thank you for coming on to the show, man.
Absolutely, thank you.
Glad to have you, and till next time, man. We finna sign out. Peace.
All right, take care.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode. If you enjoyed it, be sure to follow us on social media and subscribe to the show wherever you listen to podcasts so you never miss an episode. If you are looking for fitness coaching to help you reach your goals, want to join our animated network for fitness guidance, collaborations, networking, and community, or are interested in being a guest on the show, check out the links in the description. Stay creative, stay fit, and we'll holler at you next time.